Good evening and welcome to this special presentation. I'm Sanket Upadhyay. In this economic doom and gloom, there is also a story which is quite literally food for thought. Indian startup company Zomato has launched an IPO, and in this limited period has been oversubscribed as well. This has built quite an appetite actually as far as others are concerned, with more and more companies now deciding to take this route. What does this mean for the Indian economy, for startups, for you and me? We will try to decode this unicorn parade with the help of our expert panel who are joining us right now. Unicorn parade, startups coming of age, Indian startups being funded by Indian money and also funding from abroad, but lots of them now being valued at a certain price, people wanting to invest in them. What does this mean? Have our startups come of age? What does this mean? Should we or will we be in a situation where more startups are likely to be joining this unicorn IPO parade? I would like to welcome our guest, Ajay Chaudhary, founder of HCL, chairman, FICCI Startup Committee, Padmaja Ruparel, co-founder of the Indian Angel Network, Amulik Singh Bijral, member of the FICCI Young Leaders Forum and founder and CEO of Chai Point. We also have Mr. K. Ganesh, serial entrepreneur, promoter of Big Basket. Thank you very much to all of you all for joining us. I want to begin with you, Mr. Chaudhary. You know, investors, it seems it's very clear to try to explain those who do not understand this. For the layman, investors are willing to pump in money in Indian startups. But you know, this will also be seen as a sort of a paradigm shift for investors, because many of these companies are not really making money, and yet there are investments in them. What does this mean? Why is that happening?
Well, basically, earlier, if you know, you were not allowed to list in India if you were not making money. But all those things changed because SEBI recognized very clearly that a new type of organizations are coming into place, and you need to provide them to go public. If you don't allow them, they'll go abroad. So that's a major change that took place, and that's very good. Now, if you look at this whole issue of profitability is not the only issue why people invest. Globally, people are investing on startups because they see great scale happening through startups. And the kind of growth that startups are going to show is not going to be linear. It is going to be exponential. So if you actually start looking at the differentials between normal businesses, brick and mortar, and the newer businesses, that's the reason why people invest. And lastly, if you look at Amazon, when Amazon went for a listing, I think somewhere in 1997, they were not making money. But look at their current situation. They started making money maybe somewhere around 2001. But look at their valuation today. So it's all about getting more customers on board as far as Amazon was concerned.
Yeah.
So a similar situation exists for all others.
Okay. Mr. Ganesh, I want to come to you now. You know, this pandemic has also given a sort of a digital push, right? At a time when many businesses shut down, you see that not just valuation, but generally these companies which have anything to do, startups that have to do with technology, have actually done well for themselves. So do you think that this will be or is usually the top, the top of the mind for a venture capitalist, that even in this time of pandemic, because technology is being used by many of these startups, so it's worth investing in them. What's your experience been?
No, so worldwide we have seen using technology, using internet, digital tools, and various technology tools, the companies have been able to scale, address core pain points, whether it's roti, kapada, makan, education, entertainment, all of those, and have created huge value for investors, for venture capitalists, by solving a pain point using technology. And pandemic has only accelerated it, whether it is Flipkart, e-commerce delivery, Big Basket, grocery delivery, or Byju's, or companies providing education online, all of that has had multiple impact because of pandemic. Even without the pandemic, using technology, we have been able to solve core problems, provide convenience, provide lower cost to consumers. Take Uber, Ola, Lyft, for example. Okay, how it solved the transportation problem, make it easy for people, consumers and commuters to do. Even before pandemic, has been the way how growth is taking place. Technology companies are valued for the scalability. They grow dramatically, dominate the market, become stronger and stronger as they grow. It's called the virtuous cycle or the flywheel effect. Right? You take a marketplace or a platform. You have sellers on one side and buyers on one side. Magically, if you're able to get a lot more buyers, then automatically sellers will come there. Because a lot of sellers are there, buyers will flock there. This is the flywheel or virtuous cycle. This can happen only because of technology. Finally, just look at Ola, for example, or Uber. You could not have thought of Ola or Uber 10 years back when there was no smartphone, when there was no Google Map, when there was no geotagging. You could not do that. Similarly, Swiggy, Zomato, delivery on demand. You could not have done it without this technology. Now, with the technology, they will scale phenomenally, and that is what is getting valued. Profit, standard metrics like earnings per share, price equity ratio, all of those are meaningless. All of us learn. Journalists, the media, the analysts, the retail investor has to learn the new metrics of valuing companies on lifetime value, customer acquisition cost, retention, churn, all of those things. That is where the future is.
So this is all, it all depends on hope that eventually in the future, you're betting big on someone's growth. It's pretty much that, isn't it, Mr. Ganesh?
No, not really. See, today it looks like as if, why would I pay such a high value for a loss-making company which has got negative unit margins, then they lose money per order. But look at it the other way. Otherwise, what are you doing? The investor is investing in a bank or FMCG stock at 40, 50, 60 times price to earnings. You are taking as much of a huge risk there, paying such a high price for a traditional business model which is getting disrupted. I'm not saying each of the new technology stocks will make money. Okay, you have to be discerning, you have to be patient. But the risk is no greater than valuing old economy companies trading at 50 to 60 things. So take your pick. The future is here. Globally, if you see, the stock market indices are dominated by Amazon, by Google, by Facebook, by Apple, all of those. In India, as Ajay Chaudhary mentioned, we have not allowed them to list. Now we are allowing them to list. So you will see in the next 5 to 10 years, whether it's NSE or the Indian stock markets, 40 to 50% will be technology stocks. The choice is for the retail investor, whether you want to ride the upside or you want to still be in the old economy side looking at EPS and profit and stay out. Who is going to be the loser?
Very interesting. Padmaja Ruparel, I want to come to you now and quote this PwC report, which says that India is a hotspot representing 50% of the total top unicorns in the region, and India is expected to have 150 unicorns over the next 3 years. That tally right now in 2021 is at 50. Yet, and as we were discussing just a short while ago, which has been elaborated upon by Mr. Ganesh as well as Mr. Chaudhary, you have many of these unicorns defying conventional logic of valuations being based on future earnings. And there are many companies, I won't like to pinpoint any one particular company, but there are many companies and many examples where at this moment these companies are running into losses. They are loss-making ventures in a conventional sense. What keeps that hope going? What is this new paradigm that investors see in these companies?
I think, Sanket, one of the very important factors for any business is how do the customers of that business look at it, right? As you see in Zomato, for instance, itself has become a platform where there is such a high engagement of customers, right? They are using Zomato, they are using the infrastructure, the whole food delivery model has been pioneered and they have gone global. So it's an excellent example of how innovation, which Zomato started to do, has not only scaled in India and overseas, but has engaged with a very large customer base. So if there is a customer who's paying for the service or the platform that Zomato is providing, I think that is a value that is getting today recognized in one way. Secondly, I think just by listing in India, and I do want to really appreciate SEBI to open up listing in India for such companies. I think just doing that, we are being able to monetize value of our companies in our country. And I think that's a very important point, because this will allow a lot of investors to
Is
start
there any
seeing
risk,
value of their
Ms.
investment.
Padmaja, that we run in doing so? Because, I'm sure you must have heard a lot of people say that the stock market is almost operating in a bubble. You look at the economy outside and then you look at the stock market, you seem to be looking at two totally different entities. So do you think that this allowing startups may just add to what many people fear is also a bubble?
But startups are the ones who are making huge returns for their investors. And I think that's what is now getting recognized and being given to the public markets. So here, I think I would really say that the number of unicorns that you quoted from the PwC report, I think we are going to see there are a lineup of unicorns, and each of them is going to go down many of them, not each, I'm sorry, would go down the IPO way.
Sure.
And that would be great. So there is value creation for customers, value creation for investors, and of course for the entrepreneurs. But more importantly, I think what they will unleash is many more startups to really take the risk, innovate, build companies on scale, and go global. So I think that is really the opportunity.
Okay. Amulik Singh is also with us. He's the man who offers tea for a living. Amulik Singh, thank you very much. You're the founder and CEO of Chai Point. There's a very interesting question that has come from our viewers who are very interested in this story. And I would like to read this out and maybe know your opinion. A series of bad reviews and tweets from customers who are also investors and market sentiment might impact the company's day-to-day sales. The output of this can be a considerable loss, and a competitor hasn't offered IPO, can bank on this opportunity. What are your thoughts on it? I think it's a very, very interesting question, because with technology also comes this risk of fluctuation, and it can take a series of bad reviews. I'll also give you an example. I'll go a step further. You have moments where in case of a political conflict or in a political debate, people start saying uninstall this app, uninstall that app, and that also leads to a considerable amount of loss.
I think, Sanket, what needs to be appreciated is that the digital media moves very fast. The digital world as such moves very fast. We are living in a time where we are going to be subjected to an exponential change, which is even difficult to imagine in the line of business thanks to digital. So when such a tweet storm happens, the memory is really very short. Customers in the long run, investors in the long run are very smart to kind of balance it out and look at a company's performance over not only a quarter, but years. I think any mature company, if it starts getting influenced by a tweet or a tweet storm, certainly is not there for the long haul. And anyone which is in the IPO game knows that you can't really go by these things. So I think the media frankly pays more attention than the customers do to such things over a long-term basis.
Very, very interesting. And then generally, what's your opinion about these companies going the IPO way? Do you think this is a good sign and perhaps recognition of this new business model?
Absolutely. I mean, look at the jobs that are getting created. Look at the enthusiasm that an IPO brings to the employees of startups. ESOPs, a tool which often is maligned, has gotten an amazing credibility in the last, I would say, 9-12 months, when we have seen some startups across the sectors getting listed. So, that drives the youth to really commit themselves to a company which has hope for the future. I mean, you have to appreciate, Sanket, that it's the startups who are trying to visualize and trying to be ready for the future more than the established players. Simply because the established players have to take care of things here and now. So if you don't have employees who are enthused, and an IPO really gives such a level of credence to ESOP as an instrument, then how are you going to build the companies in the future?
In fact, I know many. In fact, Mr. Chaudhary, I know of many companies who are established companies and yet they have carved out this small space from within their big company and devoting some amount of money for startups. So they want to, within their system, create startups in recognition of this new mode. I want to ask you, Mr. Chaudhary, what does this mean as far as government's initiatives are concerned? Obviously, Mr. Amitabh Kant or Mr. Modi will be very happy to know that these are Indian companies who are growing and are valued so much, right? But what sort of government intervention or help beyond what is already happening is required from here on to take this really to the next level?
You see, government needs to communicate positively about this, because if Startup India talks about it and says we are very proud to see such IPOs happen in this country, I think it will be very good for the startup ecosystem. The second point I would like to make is that there is a definite benefit that the investor is getting for the first time. Till now, who was investing in startups? Lot of VC funds from abroad. Global money was coming in. Tencent, this, that. You heard all that before.
Yeah.
Today, for the first time in an IPO, you are getting Indian money mainly. Yes, there are anchor investors, which are there. There are about 180 anchor investors, for example, for Zomato. But some of them are global, but a lot of them are Indian. So for the first time, the retail investor is getting an opportunity to invest in something which is new, which has a future, and which is different. Something like what they can start to expect things that happened to, for example, Amazon, what happened to Facebook. Now look at Facebook. When they came out, their share price was $38. What is it today? Somewhere around $350. So that's the kind of benefit that retail investors will finally get to see. And this is something they've not seen before.
Sure.
These kind of things don't happen in brick and mortar.
Mr. Chaudhary, would you see this necessarily as a problem that usually it is seen that, whenever something new begins? For instance, I'd like to jog your memory back to the time when we had multiple telecom players, and then we now more or less have a duopoly, because suddenly big players saw, okay, capital investment, this is, and some smaller players were driven out also, as the allegations were. This has happened in every sector which is booming. Initially, you have people who take the risks, and then eventually big players, the big fish comes and eats them up. Do you think that, I don't want to be, sound negative here, but do you feel that something like this may also happen with Indian startups, and is that necessarily a bad thing?
No. I think you need to look at within the startup ecosystem different verticals. So within a vertical, you might have 2, 3, 4 big companies that will emerge. Rest of them may die off. So that's the kind of stuff that's going to happen. Telecom is a very different story, unfortunately. Telecom, the government wanted to make more money, and therefore they went out and asked them to pay crazy amount of money for the spectrum that they were selling. So that's really what's destroyed the telecom business. Now consolidation is happening. Even now, because of some of these issues that happened to telecom, the pricing is still not right.
Okay. Ankit Mehta, he's the CEO and co-founder of IdeaForge Technology Private Limited, is also with us. Mr. Mehta, because we are dealing with technology and we are talking about technology, it's very, very important to talk about internet penetration, because that is at the very heart of whatever ideation takes place, and also the growth story for everyone. Now, large parts of this country are still, or reaching the 4G network level. We are now toying with the idea of large-scale 5G expansion whenever that happens. What do you see as your vision as far as this increase in broadband is concerned? For instance, 4G penetration and eventually moving to 5G. What can it do to the startup space?
I think as more and more number of people get connected, get used to dealing with this technology, it is evident that we will have to think of more and more ways of engaging them, more and more ways of enabling the spread and proliferation of this technology, and more and more ways of leveraging the benefits that this technology brings in all the areas, such as it goes deeper into rural areas, agricultural information, and a lot of other enterprise conversations will reach those people more effectively. There will be significantly greater dissemination of knowledge, significantly greater opportunities created because education can reach those areas. High quality education can reach a lot of those areas. So a lot is going to transform when this penetration increases, and it's only through this penetration that we will continue to see the upcoming waves of growth. And as the bandwidth increases with 5G, of course, it's again going to increase the pace of consumption of everything that we are consuming today, and it's going to only increase the demand for content, demand for various businesses to reach them, to be able to service their demand as well as educate them to come and add more value to the economy.
Okay. Mr. Ganesh, I want to now come to you. You see, one of the things that many startups or any investor is going to look for in a country is stability. Stability as far as arbitration is concerned and stability as far as rules are concerned. So do you think that this is going to be one big challenge that many investors and many startup companies are going to look at? How important do you think this is? That we don't change rules too often.
Yeah. So, no, very clearly for investors, it's extremely important to have unambiguous, clearly stated rules and regulations, what is allowed, what is not allowed, very clearly upfront. And second, we have seen sometimes people have implemented, the government has implemented retrospective effect like the angel tax. All those things should not be there. So clear unambiguous policy, stated, implemented clearly is very important. I'm very happy to see that of late the government, before announcing a policy, consults various stakeholders, puts up a draft policy like the e-commerce draft policy has been put up, invite consultations. I'm not happy with some of the regulations, but at least there is a clear-cut consultative process and the desire to ensure that they are not done with retrospective effect. All of this is very important. The Vodafone tax case, for example, came under a lot of discussion. Fortunately, these are one-off things. Okay, right? So hopefully,
but you know, very quickly, one thing that I wanted to ask you, maybe Ms. Ruparel can take this one. The point is, we're dealing with technology, and technology changes very fast. So if you have a law adapting to that changing technology, will that necessarily be seen as a negative?
So, you know, to my mind, you're right, technology changes very quickly, and so does innovation. You see, as you start building new business models or products, there will be gaps which the next wave of innovation will create. And it is also true that rules will follow innovation. Innovation doesn't follow rules.
Correct.
Right? So I think what is required is, as long as innovative companies and business models start building out, I think there is a very clear need for rules to get quickly clarified and moved in. So it needs to be more of an enabling policy making. It needs to be a more, as Ganesh said, the consultative part has started, but it needs to be much more enabling, and that will help more innovation to come through. And as we get into technology space, which is the new infrastructure highway for the country and around the world, and new markets open up, digitization increases, this is going to happen. It is irrefutable. It will not stop.
Correct.
So I think our policy making frameworks will also need to speeden up and innovate very quickly so that it becomes an enabling ecosystem for companies to grow quickly.
Sure. Okay. All right. Mr. Chaudhary, Ms. Ruparel, Mr. Bijral, Mr. Mehta, as well as Mr. Ganesh, thank you very much. Here's hoping that there are many more startups, many more unicorns, and all of you make a lot of money for this country. Thank you very much. Good night and goodbye.